Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today for a conversation on urban agriculture and bees in honor of Earth Month celebration with the Georgia World Congress Center. We have a very fun discussion set up for you with our friends from Bee Downtown and some of our Team Authority team members. On this panel, I'd like to introduce the Director of Sustainability and CSR, Tim Trefzer, our Chief, Paul Guerrucci, with the Georgia World Congress Center, and Leigh-Kathryn Bonner, CEO and founder of Bee Downtown. And now I will invite Tim to the virtual platform.
All right. Well, thank you, Janet, so much. And Leigh-Kathryn and Chief Guerrucci, thank you guys for both joining us and having this conversation today. I'm really excited to talk to you both and hear a little bit more about your stories. And so I think, well, to give some background to our viewers, we've been working with Leigh-Kathryn Bonner and Bee Downtown for almost 3 years now with the beehives on our campus, which are located over off of Northside Drive and Boone Boulevard, just north of the blue parking lot. We just had them reinstalled, had to have them temporarily relocated due to the construction of the West Side Beltline connector trail. But they're back and redesigned and looking better than ever. So we are excited to have them back. And I think what's really going to be interesting is just to understand why we have this partnership and why this is important to our business at the Authority. So I think it'd be really interesting to start with you, Leigh-Kathryn, and tell us, why should we care about honeybees? Don't they sting people? I mean, what good are they?
Yes. Honeybees are our world's most important pollinator in regards to agricultural production. And so honeybees, every year we lose about 35% of the honeybees in the United States. And they're responsible for every third bite of food we eat, 70 of the world's top 100 food crops. And so they're an indicator species. So the fact that honeybees are dying, as well as native pollinators, which are also super important, the fact that they're dying around the world at quite alarming rates means they're trying to tell us something is wrong in our environment, something is out of balance. And it's important that we listen to them. So while we put beehives in urban areas, studies show that bees thrive in urban environments because they're in stable living conditions. They don't have as many stressors. They have more food for longer periods of time throughout the year. For us to put bees in cities, it's trying to provide education around the importance of agriculture. And yes, the Georgia World Congress Center bees are near a lot of urban farms, actually. So they help pollinate and produce food for a lot of urban farms. But really, those hives are there to teach people about the importance of agriculture, where our food comes from, as well as stewardship of our environment.
Yeah, and there are a lot of business benefits for us as the Authority just to have them. I mean, well, one being it's a differentiator for us. Not many convention centers have beehives, let alone get to use the honey that's produced in the hives in their own food service offerings, and to be able to give those to clients and guests and residents of Atlanta. But I'm curious, what drew you to GWCCA? Why is our campus a good location, and how does that fit into the broader context of your strategy for Atlanta?
Yeah, so we started in North Carolina, and Atlanta was always where I wanted to expand to first. It's a city, especially a southern city, that's years ahead of many other southern cities in regards to sustainability, through a lot of work that has been done intentionally with the city and the state to get Atlanta to that point. But the Georgia World Congress Center was always one where it's such a epicenter of the city. There's so much history and so much that happens there that for me, it was this idea of, wow, if we could get bees here and people, if that would happen, then, so many companies, so many people would be able to see the bees and learn about the importance of it. And so Georgia World Congress Center was one of the very first companies we talked to. And I remember sitting down with Tim being terrified because it was Georgia World Congress Center. And Tim was great. You were just like, this is awesome. We got to do this. Why would we not? Like, this is so important. And so it was the moment in which I felt and I knew Atlanta was going to work. If a company and an authority with this much authority within this in the city was so on board with it and said this has to happen, I realized it's going to work in Atlanta and do very, very well.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I distinctly remember sitting down with you as well. It was a summer day, I think. It was hot out, you know that, and
yes.
it was just a great business proposition, a great idea, and we were just glad to be one of the first partners that you had in Atlanta. But now I know that has evolved over the last 3 to 4 years. Tell us more about what your presence in Atlanta is, and distinctly thinking about the map that you've shown me that kind of overlays all the different hives that you have in the city, and why is that important?
Absolutely. So honeybees fly in a 3-mile radius on average. They can fly further than that, but if food sources are available, it's 3 miles. So within a city, those radiuses of the Georgia World Congress Center hives, the Truly Living Well hives, the Georgia Power hives, those radiuses begin to overlap. And what happens is we have corridors that are created, and everything around pollinator health and sustainability talks about creating corridors for pollinators to move within that are healthy. And yes, we bring the bees, but the first thing our partners ask is, well, what can we plant? What can we stop spraying? How can we talk to our landscapers? Can you lead any classes for pollinators so that people know how to plant for pollinators when they go home? And it creates this ripple effect. But Georgia it's about to beat North Carolina, and North Carolina has the largest single management corridor in the country that's connected. It's about 65 miles long, of all bee downtown hives, managed the same way, with education, with campuses that are doing a lot of work to build out more native pollinator friendly areas for all the pollinators. Georgia is at like 50 something, and we've got 2 open spots, one just south of the airport and one in between Atlanta and Alpharetta, where if either of those get filled by a partner, it will become the largest corridor in the country.
Wow. And so why is that important, though? What's the significance of that?
One, the corridors for the honeybees and other pollinators are super important to be able to move throughout, to have more food for the pollinators. It's helping create great environments for the pollinators. But the piece that I think is so beautiful is we didn't ask one company or the city to fund all of this to make it happen. It's each company doing their own small part for the greater good of the community. In Atlanta, we work with Invesco, Cox Enterprises, Chick-fil-A, Georgia World Congress Center, Intercontinental Exchange, Georgia Power. We work with Georgia 400, Crown Point, Pont City Market. We have these little Delta, AT&T. I'm going to forget some and get in trouble here with it, but we have all of these partners that are on what we call the B team. It's the best team, and they're all working together to make a difference. And it's fun to know who has the hives, where they're hidden throughout the city, and it's almost like a Where's Waldo throughout Atlanta of where the beehives are.
Nice. Yeah. And you mentioned the educational piece and how it can create a ripple effect, which is ultimately the goal, I think, for your company. One of the really great benefits that the authority has received from our partnership with you is all the educational benefits to our employees, and having several different activities at the beehives themselves, actually getting our team members in bee suits, getting them into the hives, holding the frames, looking for the queen, getting to try the honey and compare them. And one of the unique advantages of the relationship as well was the Hive Mind Leadership Workshop or Institute, where we had half-day sessions with leaders from your organization, really relating the function of beehives and the jobs of bees to business. Can you elaborate a little bit more about how those relate?
Yeah, honeybees are one of Mother Nature's best storytellers, and our Leadership Institute is based in a field of study called biomimicry. It's taking and looking at naturally occurring processes to help solve problems in our human world. For an example, is we wouldn't have Delta without biomimicry, because we built airplanes and airplane wings based off of birds' wings. So that's an example of biomimicry, and it's typically done in design and engineering. But we look at the hive colony and say, okay, well, it is one of Mother Nature's super organisms. It's a superstructure. And so what can we glean from 65,000 bees all working in perfect tandem together? And we teach classes around high performing teams, around how do you create higher levels and more efficient levels of communications within companies, what it looks like to be an effective leader, just like it looks like to be an effective beekeeper. And we allow people to put on suits, work the hives, and the bees teach us this. The bees are better teachers. So we facilitate. We joke we're modern day Loraxes. Instead of speaking for the trees, we speak for the bees. And so we help facilitate those conversations, but they're memorable to people because they're learning from the bees about how to create more cohesive and effective teams through experiential kinetic learning.
Yeah, and they've been so much fun. And I think one of the most memorable experiences that I had was when our executive director, Frank Poe, was in the beehive, in the bee suits, and was just telling us how this is something he wants to learn so that when he retires, he can go into beekeeping. And it's just fascinating, some of the major business leaders that are beekeepers. I mean, you've got a whole litany of partners that are beekeepers, like not Truett, but Dan Cathy, right?
Dan Cathy's a beekeeper. Paul Bowers is the CEO of George Power. One of his best friends is the largest honey distributor in the country. Marty Flanagan, his wife, is a beekeeper as well. Yes, we always say about the Georgia World Congress Center connection too. I joke that the honeybees give the Illuminati, or the beekeepers give the Illuminati a run for their money. They're everywhere and nobody knows who they are until you're surprised by, oh, wait, what? You're a beekeeper? Which I think is part of this too with Chief here, is he's part of the bee Illuminati crew that nobody may know about, but he's also part of the team.
Well, that was going to be my connection to Chief here. He is a beekeeper and had bees at his home here in Atlanta. And Chief, how'd you get into it? Where did this all start?
Well, it actually started many years ago, where I kind of grew up on a farm in Conyers, had 105 acres, and my father kept bees. So I learned that process through him. I wasn't particularly interested in it during that time, but I did learn a lot from it and learned how to actually, keep the bees, maintain the bees, live with the bees, and learn the ins and outs and how they swarm and leave, and what are some of the hardships of keeping the hives going, and what other kind of animals interfere with their progress. So I had a little core knowledge of that, and then I always just love for nature and having land, working the land, and working it in harmony with all animals and insects, and it all works together. You've got to have one to make the other successful in one way or another. So then when I moved to Atlanta, I have a house in Grant Park, which I've been there for over 20 years. And then had the opportunity in 2004 to buy a little bit bigger house in Grant Park, an old Victorian, which completely restored and renovated. And it's got a little property with it. So I've created, I guess I'd longed for the farm life again from being in the city. So I've got about a little over half an acre there. So I brought the farm to the city. So in Grant Park, I have my goats there. I've got 5 goats now. I've had turkeys, ducks, chickens, and the bees. Now, what I've also learned, just because we're in the city, there's still predators there. So with my bees, the biggest challenge I had were with moths. Moths would get in and attack the hives and destroy them. And that happened numerous times, but we just re-up again, get another queen and reestablish. I always noticed that my bees, when they left the hive, they'd travel south. So from Grant Park headed south would be towards Lakewood. And I always wondered, I'd love to have a little body cam on them to see just exactly where they were going down south. But they produced well. The hives were very healthy, thousands of bees, and occasionally they'd swarm and the queen would go off and we'd go capture them and just bring them back. And then I also have a little fountain in my house. So I really feel that the bees being there were really critical to the overall balance of certainly my property, but I felt like it's a complete balance to really harmonize with the city itself. And I just felt like the bees were part of the overall making the city green again. They just really create a positive atmosphere. I would plant flowers around so they could go to them. And it was always nice to see in the fountain where I have a pretty good water source that just thousands of bees would land in there and grab their water on the way to and from the hive. And that's always fascinating just to sit there and watch.
Yeah.
And have lots of guests come to my house, so they were fascinated by the bees as well. So it was just a great overall experience, and I really feel that it does bring harmony and peace.
Yeah,
and
it's all an ecosystem.
Yeah, it's an ecosystem, and it's a very positive piece to that. And it just won't be this. It's just not the same without them there.
Yeah.
I've got a lot of holly bushes, and I was just noticing the other day that it was just swarms of bees, and they love red tips and things of that nature. And it's a sense of happiness to just see the thousands of bees swarming them. I hate to hear that 35% a year, we're diminished by that. I hate to hear that. So I guess we need to step it up in our endeavors to bring back more through the Georgia area, through the wildflower area.
Well, so you don't have your hives anymore? What happened to them?
I don't. The last go around, they were had a moth problem, and they destroyed them. So I haven't re-upped yet.
Yeah.
Beekeeping it's been touted as a hobby in today's world, and there's been a NC State does a study on it, 470% rise in beekeeping over the last 15 years, but only a 5-year retention rate, because people look at getting bees as, oh, I can just put them in my backyard and not participate in helping them, and all of a sudden their bees die, and they don't know what happened. And so it's so important that people understand that it takes years of care, of cultivation, of mentorship, of learning. You're a second generation beekeeper, maybe even more than that. I'm a fourth generation beekeeper, and we try to tell people all the time is, you have to be a steward of your environment, and that means taking care of your bees, but also taking care of the other bees in the area as well. It's a balance, and if people want to become beekeepers, it's more than just getting a beehive in the backyard. It's really learning the craft of what you're starting, this endeavor on.
Yeah, that's right. And then you have to carefully place them in your yard. I have the other animals. So I mentioned earlier, my goats, for some reason, are just attracted to the bee boxes, and they either want to headbutt them or jump on top of them and knock them over. So, little disruptor there. So I've had to find places where it's out of their reach.
Yeah. Goats jump on everything, don't they?
They do. Yeah.
What's your favorite animal name that you have?
Tallulah.
Tallulah. Is she a goat?
She's
or
a goat.
duck?
She's a goat. Yeah.
It's awesome.
Yeah. I've had her about, I think going a little over 10 years
Wow.
in Grant Park. So
What are your neighbors' reactions when they either know or see your animals?
they love them.
Do they?
Yeah. And of course, they're always welcome to walk back there and visit them. But very positive feedback from all our neighbors. Of course, it all goes back to how you manage and maintain them, and don't overpopulate the field or the property. So you can keep it clean, and the animals can be well nourished and well taken care of.
Yeah. Well, one last question, I think. You've both mentioned kind of the lessons that you've learned from beekeeping. Leigh-Kathryn, you mentioned biomimicry and, gave the example of airplanes mimicking flight of birds. Chief, as somebody who's grew up around beekeeping or beehives, has there been any like key lessons that you've learned or anything that really is stuck with you, just having been around them for so long?
Well, it's a resiliency to survive, and the teamwork. They stick together, and they will stick to you if you don't treat them right.
Right.
But really, it's like you mentioned earlier, it's really the team, the camaraderie. They must have just this huge bond with each other that they'll protect each other at all costs. And
Except
because
for
of
the
that,
males. They
Except
don't
for the
love
males.
the drones. Yeah, well, yeah, they just lay around and be taken care of by
Right.
but they do add something. They keep they keep the hive going.
Yeah.
They do their part and then get kicked outside. Um,
Right.
but that's just the way that their system works. But it is one of resiliency, and the basically the nucleus of many things to keep our ecosystem balanced. So that's commendable.
I love your point of resiliency, because I feel like, especially right now, coming out of COVID and coming out of such a tough year, that it's almost like the bees, when they're in their colony and in their hive during winter, and they're
Yeah.
just trying to get through the winter. I feel like that's
Yeah.
how a lot of us feel coming out of this year and a half almost of COVID, of just trying to get through it. But knowing that come spring, the colony wakes back up, and there's
Yes.
so much life and growth and joy and beauty that comes from the work that has been done. I know everybody's probably so done with everything of the last year and a half, that this notion of resiliency, like the bees, is something that we can definitely take away from this experience, for sure.
Right. And then the other thing is they get a little granular piece of pollen and turn it into beautiful honey. So what that's a transformation for sure. So how do they do that? Now we know the process, but if you just look at it, did you have something as small as a bee that can get a speck and then turn it into something that helps them sustain life?
Mm-hmm. It's a great point. And speaking of which, speaking of honey, that is, we've been able to give all our team members some of our honey that has been produced by our beehives. Chief, hopefully you and your team have received those as well. Do you do anything, or did you, when you had the hives, do anything unique with the honey that was produced on your property?
I did from time to time, but I really felt like the bees earned it.
Yeah.
And if you take their honey, we replace it with sugar water or various other things. So, I felt blessed that I could borrow a little bit of their honey
Mm-hmm.
to see how well it tasted. And it's a very unique in this area, the type of honey. They call it wildflower, so it's very unique. But I really wanted for them to have the lion's share of their honey. But yeah, but we did borrow a little bit from them.
I love that.
Didn't take it all.
We always try to leave about 80 pounds of honey on every beehive, because yes, we will be grateful for the excess that they've made for us to have some of the liquid gold, but we never want it to be devastating to them, to the point where then they can't come back from what we take. It's like you said, it's all a balance in this world.
Well, yeah, and Chief, you mentioned the wildflower honey. Our neighbors down the street, Southern Company, Georgia Power, right down Ivan Allen Jr. Boulevard, they also have some of your beehives, Leigh-Kathryn. And how did they win an award for their honey and we didn't? I don't understand.
It's wild. So the Georgia Power beehives are currently the reigning national champions for the best tasting honey in the United States through the National Black Jar competition. So all the honey is in black jars, and it's just taste, and it's judges just tasting one honey versus another, moving one up. And we didn't think any of our honey would, there were so many entries, and then all of a sudden we found out Georgia Power won first place. Their CEO said it was great when we told him. He's got the blue ribbon in the shadow box now, but he said Georgia Power employees are committed to the highest level of excellence that we can provide. It's amazing to find out that the Georgia Power bees are committed to that same level of excellence, which was awesome. But I really want to know what their secret sauce was, whatever they concoction they went to. And that's what's great, like what you were saying, Chief, about wildflower honey, is it's so complex. It's not that the bees went to one monofloral source, which is usually very expensive honey to do monofloral honeys, but in a city the bees go, we don't know where the bees went. We don't know what floral sources they found. So the honey is very complex and typically does well in honey shows because there's so many flavor profiles and tastes and variations. So we're going to enter the Georgia World Congress Center honey back in it again. We'll see if you guys are clearly in the vicinity for the best honey in the country. So we're going to put it back in for this year's show.
Okay, good. Well, fingers crossed we can pull it out this time. I really thank you both for taking the time for this. We're really excited just to have this relationship with Bee Downtown, and Chief, just to have somebody on staff who is so invested in the same cause. And please continue to encourage your team and the rest of Team Authority to participate in the beehives when we have activities. I know that we've done quite a few things over the past, but we're going to continue doing them, and we can't wait to have more participation from our team members. Leigh-Kathryn, any final words from you?
No, it's a joy to work with Georgia World Congress Center. We have loved working with you guys. We have been so grateful for your unwavering support of the whole of the mission of our company. It's not, you guys understand, it's not about you. It's about all of us collectively. It's the we over I. It's the hive mind, and we're very glad to have you as one of our partners.
Thank you. And Chief, any final words of wisdom?
No, just glad to be a part of it, and now I'm inspired more by what I've heard. So I didn't realize that we had little pockets of bees all over this corridor. So I was just thinking, do I have any property in Alpharetta? Because I do have some in White County. Oh. So that's a little north. I'm like, hey, maybe we can put it there.
Yeah, extend that corridor.
Yeah, is that anywhere in proximity? That's near Helen.
I will have to look at a map. I am bad at geographical locations, but I'll look at a map and we can chat.
That'll help. Yeah, I have 30 acres there.
Awesome. Okay.
So we can put some up there if we need to.
Thank you. I appreciate that. See, beekeepers stick together.
That's right.
I love it. I love it. It's more than a hobby. It's a lifestyle.
Yeah.
So, well, thank you both again so much. This has been a really great conversation. Like you, Chief, I'm inspired, and I need to do more research so that I can become an official beekeeper myself. But again, Leigh-Kathryn, thank you for your partnership and the great work that you and your team are doing at Bee Downtown. Chief, as always, thank you. It's been great, and enjoy the rest of your Earth Month.
Thank you. Talk to you soon.
All right,
Bye.
bye guys.